I'm a former intelligence officer. I actually started out in 1980 at the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, where I served as the intelligence officer for the Nonproliferation Bureau, as well as the action officer for Pakistan nuclear issues. So I did that for a couple of years and learned quite a bit about Pakistan's nuclear weapons program and AQ-Khan and their clandestine procurement networks. And then I was out of government for a few years, and I joined the CIA in 1985, and I was a counterproliferation intelligence officer. And I was responsible for both Pakistan's nuclear weapons development as well as their clandestine nuclear procurement activities, both Khan Research Labs and the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission, because they both had clandestine procurement networks. Just to be clear, I did not uncover Pakistan's nuclear program. We had quite a bit of intelligence about Pakistan's nuclear program when I joined the CIA. I was the one who took action against the networks because nobody was doing it. So we have two primary directorates in the CIA. The Directorate of Operations, which are the field agents, the field case officers, and then the Directorate of Intelligence, which is primarily analytical. And we had huge quantities of intelligence about Khan's networks and the PAEC networks. The problem is that nobody was taking action in our government. And both I and my entire chain of command in the Directorate of Intelligence were very concerned that a country like Pakistan obtaining nuclear weapons could pose a very serious threat to U.S. and Western international security. The problem we had was the Director of Operations was in the middle of the first Afghan war, fighting the Soviets with the Mujahideen, and they wouldn't take action against the Pakistani networks. They just weren't interested. They were the Cold Warriors, really, that was their primary, if not sole focus at the time. And so we went and met with our lawyers and showed them the intelligence. And, there were a lot of potential criminal violations of U.S. export control and other laws. And we briefed the Justice Department, and they instructed us to get busy working with law enforcement agents to start busting the agents of AQ-Khan and the PAEC. There was only so much we could do without the cooperation of the directorate, the DO, as we call it.
Operations.
It was evident to me that, the only way to deal with this situation was to arrest or otherwise put Khan and his agents and the PAC out of business. Diplomacy was not going to do it. So, with the approval of my superiors at the CIA and our lawyers, I spent quite a bit of time and organized a working group to bring together law enforcement and intelligence agencies to take action to bust these networks. That's how it began. It was called the Nuclear Export Violations Working Group. And, not long after that group was established, we had many other cases we were working on, but I was informed by someone in the Department of Energy that a Pakistani by the name of Arshad Pervez, who lived in Canada, had contacted a U.S. steel company seeking very large quantities, about 25 metric tons of Malaysian 350 steel. So, on that case, working with the Customs Service, we ran an undercover operation, and eventually we arrested Mr. Pervez. He was being run by a retired Pakistani general named Inam ul-Haq, and he was supposed to show up in Pennsylvania at the steel company, and there was a warrant for his arrest as well. You know, he was the big wheel in this equation. Pervez was really not that bright, to be honest with you. Well, ul-Haq didn't show up, and I learned that some people in the State Department had tipped off the Pakistani government to this arrest warrant.
Yes.
So we didn't get ul-Haq, and after the arrest became public, there was an explosion down on Capitol Hill because President Zia had pretty much committed to keeping the lid on his enrichment and weapons program at that point, low enrichment, etc., and stop this type of clandestine procurement. So this caused a firestorm on Capitol Hill, and there were immediate calls. There are laws that were passed in our Congress that any country that exports illegally or attempts to export illegally U.S. equipment for the purpose of nuclear weapons development shall have all of its foreign aid terminated.
Yes, the Solars and the Pressler amendments.
Exactly. I'm trying not to get it. This is a complicated issue here. I'm trying not to get into all the background.
Yeah.
So I was sent down along with our National Intelligence Officer, David Einsel, for proliferation to testify at this hearing. And there had been concerns prior to my arrival at the office I worked at in the DI that the NIO was not being forthcoming with the Congress, withholding information about Pakistan's nuclear weapons activities, and particularly these clandestine procurement activities. So the congressmen were furious because they saw this as basically, they were considering a very large aid package to Pakistan at the time. And they saw this as Zia basically giving them the finger, when in fact, it was really just a rather large blip on a very busy radar screen, but they hadn't been told about it. So it was a pretty stormy hearing, and I was under direct instructions from my TI chain of command and my lawyers, keeping in mind that we were in the middle of the Iran-Contra episode, literally.